So I'm very happy to see all of you here again, another Monday night. It's really wonderful to see such great interest here in learning about the Dharma. So I'm very grateful that you're showing your interest by coming on these Monday and Saturday nights. So first of all, thank you all very much for coming.
首先，上司係好開心再見到你哋一齊嚟聽呢個佛法。咁咧，佢亦都係覺得咧，你哋係對佛法咧係相當有大嘅興趣咧，所以先會嚟參加。特別喺你每逢星期一同星期六，可能大家會有好多節目，或者星期一好忙都嚟參加，所以上司係非常之感激你哋。
The reason it's so wonderful that you're coming here is because the way to bring ourselves happiness, lasting happiness, is to follow the Dharma. And so we have to learn about the Dharma in order to be able to practice it properly. But if we practice the Dharma, it's good that we practice it not just for our own benefit, because, it's not just us, it's our family, it's everyone else in the city, it's everyone else in the world, it's all the other beings, all the animals, everyone else. Everyone, all sentient beings need to be brought to happiness. And so now please listen to these teachings tonight with the attitude that it is in order to bring all sentient beings, those we can see and those we can't see, to the state of Buddhahood, that we need to practice the Dharma. And in order to practice the Dharma, we need to first study the Dharma and contemplate the Dharma. And so please listen to these teachings this evening with this motivation of bodhicitta.
主要咧係我哋每一個人都希望離苦得樂，但係點可以得到快樂咧？就係我哋要藉着從佛法帶俾我哋真正內心嘅安樂。咁首先我哋要點樣去修咧？就係話首先我哋嘅動機係好緊要嘅。首先我哋嚟咧，主要就唔係為咗個人嘅利益，亦都唔係為咗自己屋企人嘅利益，而係為咗呢個世界同埋甚至乎其他世界所有嘅有情眾生，所以我哋會嚟聽佛法。所以咧，我哋要搞清楚我哋嚟聽嘅態度同埋個動機。主要咧，我哋係要透過聞思修三樣，然後先至可以從中得到利益同埋證悟。
And in order to really practice the Dharma, in order to study and practice and get any benefit out of the Dharma, we first of all need to have some discipline, some moral or ethical discipline. If we do not have that, we will not have the basis for the other qualities to develop.
首先，我哋要從佛法度得到利益咧，就係首先我哋要有自律嘅能力，我哋要時常咧都要有個警惕嘅心，知道自己係咩應該做，咩係唔應該做。
We can think about it. It makes common sense, I think. If you are always getting distracted by all the things that you want for yourself, and you aren't able to resist your urges to do bad things, then you will not be able to calm your mind enough to practice meditation.
咁其實基本上咧，亦都係一般人都會知道噶啦。咁如果我哋成日咧都係俾外境咧去轉我哋啊，纏繞住我哋咧，咁就會令到我哋嘅心唔清淨。當我哋心唔清淨，我哋就冇辦法去學到佛法。
And so we do need to have this sense of restraint, restraining ourselves from doing wrong acts. And we need to commit ourselves to doing good acts. This is what the essence of a vow really is.
咁基本上咧，我哋要明白，首先我哋有好多係唔應該做嘅嘢，即係違背因果嘅嘢，我哋唔應該做。有啲咩我哋係應該做，咁我哋首先要去搞清楚。咁而戒律咧，就係基本上咧，就係個意義就係呢度，就係要防非止惡，同埋去積極行善。
Actually, all of our practice can be included within the 3 different types of vows that we practice in Tibetan Buddhism.
咁基本上咧係主要喺藏傳佛教咧係有3種戒律，我哋係要守持。
So now it's time for the quiz. Those of you who were here last week, what are the 3 types of vows?
咁上個禮拜有嚟嘅咧，而家佢要考試，咁就問你哋係邊3種戒。
What's the first type of vow? The precepts. Yeah. So in general, the first type of vows, it's called the pratimoksha vows in Sanskrit, or the vows of individual liberation.
咁首先第一種戒咧就係叫做別解脫戒。
So that's the first sort of category of vows or type of vows. And then what's the second type of vows? The second, Posa Gai.
咁第二咧就係佢講咗啦，菩薩戒。
Right, the Bodhisattva vows. And then the third type of vows, Mansang. Okay. The Vajrayana, the vows of the secret tantra. So we have the first are what? Yeah, individual liberation. And the second are Polsagai. And the third?
Masengai.
Oh, yeah. Good. But the first one is kind of complicated because there are several different types. So last week, what did we talk about? Last week we talked about the 8 precepts of the fasting vows. Okay? So there are the fasting vows. These are the pratimokta, the vows of individual, the first type of vow of individual liberation. That's the first type. The second is the 5 precepts. Okay? These are the lay precepts. Okay? The third type of vows are the novice monastic vows, and the fourth are the bhikshu vows.
咁基本上咧，呢、個別解脫戒咧，基本上咧係可以分為3大類。咁第一類咧就係叫八關齋戒，第二咧就係我哋居士守嘅5戒，殺盜淫妄酒。咁第三咧就係沙彌同埋沙彌尼戒，第四咧就係比丘同比丘尼戒。
Okay, so now we have the second question on the quiz. What are the 8 precepts?
咁八關齋戒裏邊嗰8條戒。
Right. What are the 8? What's the first precept? Not killing, not to take life. The second, no stealing.
第一係唔可以殺生，第二係唔可以偷盜。
The third,
No adultery， 不邪淫。
The third is what is it? It's I'm forgetting myself. I've got my cheat sheet here. No sexual activity. The 8 precepts. It's no sexual activity. Nothing. No touching hands. Nothing.
係第3條戒係同5戒唔同，呢個係正淫都唔可以，連拖下手仔都唔得。
Okay.
即係不可以淫欲。
And the fourth, no lying. Right.
不妄語。
Okay. So no lying. This is especially. What is the really bad type of lie? It's when you say you have. Oh yeah.
乜嘢係大妄語？佢上個禮拜講過。Yeah. Not attain that state and tell somebody.
It's saying, yes, I have realized Mahamudra when you haven't realized anything. And you know it, right? Okay? So that's the really bad type of lie, but all types of lies actually fall under that. So those are what? The 4 root precepts, right?
咁呢個係4條根本戒。
They're called the root precepts. They're the main, the basic, the foundation.
呢4條戒係基礎，亦都係根本戒。
And then the 5th precept is no alcohol or other intoxicants. And this is called the precept of carefulness because when you drink, you get careless.
咁第5條戒咧就係話不可以飲酒同埋令到你神志不清嘅藥物。咁主要就係話飲酒或者食呢啲藥物咧係會令到我哋好唔小心，做咩嘢都會好容易犯過錯。
The 6th, the 7th, and the 8th are the 3 precepts of austerity, or the 3 precepts of austerity. So the 6th is no song, dance, jewelry, perfumes, things like that. Nothing to make yourself attractive. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, it primarily talks about not doing them yourself. It's not singing. You can sing Dharma songs. When we sing, those are fine. Actually, it says this in the Vinaya that you are allowed to sing Dharma songs, but you aren't allowed to go out and sing top 40 or anything like that.
咁第6條戒咧，基本上就係叫做不聽歌舞伎樂同埋不塗香花瓔珞，即係話我哋唔可以跳舞，唔可以唱歌，亦都唔可以戴佢首飾、化妝、香水，甚至乎佢話搽 gel 都唔得。上個禮拜咁基本上咧，即係除咗道歌，即係佛教裏邊嘅道歌，我哋可以唱之外咧，其他嗰啲流行曲啊乜嘢嘢咧都係唔得噶啦。
And then there are the no sitting on great or high seats. So great seats are big ones. And then high seats are taller than 1 cubit, or beds either. So basically, this is because at the time of the Buddha, it's only kings and big important people who sat on large seats. And so this is not to put yourself in a position of importance.
咁就係第7條戒咧，就係話不坐臥高廣大床，即係我哋唔可以瞓啲好大張嘅床或者坐啲好高嘅凳。咁基本上咧喺印度以前嘅傳統咧，淨係皇帝先至係可以坐啲咁大嘅凳。咁基本上其實呢條戒就係話唔想減輕我哋嘅驕慢心。
And so the 8th of the 8 precepts for the 8 precepts of the 1-day-long fast is everyone's favorite.
第8條戒係你哋個個都好中意 ，maybe for women only.
Which is no food at inappropriate times. So when you take the 8 precepts for the period of 1 day, then you don't eat from noon, that is when the sun is at its zenith, the highest point, until sunrise the next day.
咁第8條戒咧就叫不非時食， 就係話我哋過咗午時就係11點到1點，即係過咗1點鐘就唔可以食嘢，直至到第日日出。
So these 8 precepts, when you take them as the 8 precepts of the fasting vow, you take them for only one day. You take them from dawn of one day till dawn of the next day.
咁其實呢個8關齋戒咧係可以逐日計嘅，即係話我去受持1日，咁跟住即係可以捨戒。咁第日如果你想再走第2次咧，就重複再去做。
And because you only take them for a short time, you should hold them strictly.
因為只不過係一個好短嘅時間，所以我哋係要嚴持呢8條戒。
But you might also want to have discipline that you can, or vows or discipline that you can maintain for a longer period of time.
咁但係有時為咗我哋要自律咧，其實我哋係可以做較長嘅時間。
But if you're going to have discipline that you maintain for a longer period of time, and you live in Hong Kong, not eating afternoon is very difficult.
咁但係好似我哋喺香港呢啲咁嘅都市人咧，過午不食咧係非常之難嘅。
And so for that reason, the Buddha taught the 5 lay precepts.
所以咧就佛陀就為我哋開示咗居士嘅5戒。
So this is the second of the types of the Pratimoksha vows. The name in Sanskrit is upasaka, which means someone who approaches or who pursues virtue.
咁跟住嗰條戒咧就係居士嘅5戒，基本上就係話我哋從呢5條戒咧就可以得到我哋嘅真理。
Now usually when they teach the 3 vows, first they teach you how you take the vow, then they teach you how you keep the vow, and then they teach you what to do if you mess up.
咁基本上咧就係教我哋3樣嘢，就係話我哋點去受戒咧，同埋點去守戒咧。咁但係萬一我哋破咗戒、犯咗戒，應該點咧？
I'm going to teach the order a little bit differently.
咁今日嘅次序咧係會有啲唔同嘅。
And the reason is I think it's first important to know what it is you're getting into before you decide what it is that you're actually going to commit to.
咁就係話我哋要搞清楚，如果我哋真係要受戒嘅時候，有邊條戒我哋係應該受，自己做唔做到，有邊啲係唔得嘅，就唔好去受。
And so first we'll talk about what are the 5 precepts.
首先我哋要講乜嘢係5戒，居士5戒。
And so the 5 precepts are, we've already been through them mostly. There are no killing, no taking that which is not given, that is no stealing, no sexual misconduct, that's a little different, no lying, and no alcohol or other intoxicants. So these are the 5.
咁基本上5戒咧就同8關齋戒前嗰幾條戒有啲類似。第1條戒就係話不殺生，第2條戒就不偷盜，第3條戒咧就係話不邪淫嘅意思就係話，除咗你同你嘅配偶以外嘅性行為都係叫做犯戒。咁第4條戒咧就係叫不妄語，第5條戒就係不飲酒。
And so the first of these is no killing, and this is essentially the same as with the 24-hour fast, with the 1-day-long fasting fast. So there's bad killing and there's less bad killing. All killing is bad, of course.
咁基本上第1條戒就類似8關齋戒第1條，咁就係話不殺生，但係殺生咧亦都可以分為一啲好嚴重嘅殺行，同埋一啲冇咁嚴重嘅殺行。
So there is the killing that breaks your vow totally, and then there is the killing that is a downfall but does not break your vow completely. You still have the vow.
咁有啲殺生咧就係話完全就會令我哋破咗呢條戒，咁但係有啲殺生咧嘅行為咧就係話我哋會犯咗呢條戒，破咗即係呢條戒係完全冇咗。
And so, if it is killing that breaks your vow, what we call a defeat, then that is when you kill another person, a human.
點為之叫破戒咧？破戒就基本上就係話完全毀壞嘅意思，就係例如好似我哋殺咗個人咁。
And there are 3 factors here. You have to kill the person, you have to do it intentionally, you have to do it without mistake, and the other person has to die.
咁基於3個條件咧，就會成立呢條戒點樣去破。咁第一就係話你又係有動機咁去殺人，而你殺人嗰陣時候係完全冇出現過任何嘅錯誤。第3就係話嗰個人被殺。
So if you are driving to the airport or something and someone jumps in front of your car and you kill them, but you didn't intend to, then that does not break your vow. That's an accident. That is, it's horrible, of course, but it doesn't break your vow. And it's probably, if you probably didn't want to do it at all, it's probably not even bad karma.
咁嗱，舉個例子就係話，等於話我而家要揸架車去機場，咁沿途咧有個人跳出嚟喺馬路，咁你唔小心車死咗佢，呢個意外咧就 不會構成破咗呢條戒。當然係一樣好唔好嘅嘢，但係咁樣唔代表你係破咗呢條戒。
And the second factor is that you have to do it intentionally. So, excuse me, I already said intentionally. The second is that you are doing it without mistake. So you intend to kill someone and you kill the person whom you intend to kill.
當你去殺呢個人嘅時候，你係冇出過錯誤，亦都係你打算要殺嗰個人。
And then the third factor is, of course, that the person actually die. But they don't have to die immediately. You know, you could do something that leads to their death, but it happens, you know, they die 2 weeks, a year later.
咁點為之叫做嗰個人一定要死呢？就係話唔一定話你做咗呢個行為殺行之後，佢即刻馬上死亡，可能就係話2個禮拜或者3個禮拜後先至死，都係算計落去破咗呢條戒。因為係你導致到佢最終嘅死亡。
And this killing also includes telling someone you should die, and then if they go and kill themselves, that also is included.
呢條戒亦都包括埋係話，如果有個人想死，你叫佢去死，譬如話佢想自殺啦，你去自殺啦，咁亦都係計㗎。
And it includes abortion and euthanasia.
亦都包括埋墮胎同埋人道毀滅。
That's the defeat, killing a human intentionally or unerringly. So that's the defeat. If you kill any animal or any other being, then that is a downfall. It's a very bad thing to have done. It's worse to kill someone. It's worse to do if you were going to go to one of the restaurants in Lei Yu Moon where you go out and you get your fish, and then you bring it into the restaurant and they kill it for you and cook it. So you're responsible for that fish dying. If you do that when you don't have any vows, it's bad, but it's not as bad as if you have the vow and then you go and do it anyways.
咁如果係有動機咧去殺一個人咧，基本上就係破咗呢條戒。但係話如果我哋係犯戒，就係話例如好似畜生或者昆蟲呢一類咧，只不過會係構成一個犯戒。咁嗱，舉個例子就係話，等於我哋去到一間酒樓，你知香港人好中意食海鮮，咁你就指住話我今日要劏呢條魚。當然你冇戒，亦都係一個好唔好嘅罪行。但係如果你有戒咧，你係要負責呢條命債。
So that's the first of these. The second is no stealing.
咁跟住第二咧就係話不偷盜。
So basically, no stealing, the exact level is not entirely certain, but the value of the object that you steal determines how serious your offense was. If you're over a certain value, then you have a defeat that breaks your vow. If it's under the value, then it's just a downfall.
咁不偷盜呢條戒基本上點為之犯，點為之破呢？就係基本上就係話你偷嘢嗰個價值有幾大，有幾嚴重。基本上咧就係話你越偷嘢嗰個價值越大，就係叫做破戒。如果你偷嘢嗰個價值係少過即係佛制個限定咧，就叫做犯戒。
But the exact value is actually something that's under dispute.
但係攞咩價值嚟去衡量咧？而家仲係喺度爭論緊嘅。
It was 5 gold coins called mashikas at the time of the Buddha. And so how much is a mashika worth? This is a very important question.
咁基本上喺佛陀在世嘅時候咧，佛制就係話5個金幣。咁但係5個金幣喺嗰陣時嚟講，同5個金幣喺而家現代社會嘅價值。
Some people take the easy route and they say that it's just $1.
有啲人話係1蚊。
So by that count, if you steal anything that's worth more than 5 Hong Kong dollars, you're done. Your vow is over.
咁如果你係偷嘢偷多過5蚊咧，你已經係破咗呢條戒。
Most people don't think that, actually. The scriptures the Buddha asks one of the monks, well, what is the amount at which the king would execute you, exile you, or imprison you? And they say, it's these 5 mashikas. And so basically, the value at which it could be charged as a criminal offense is maybe another way of thinking about it.
咁喺佛制嘅時候咧，你要偷嘢，點先至會去構成個皇帝會去處決你咧，或者殺咗你咧？就係講緊頭先嗰5個金幣。
Another American scholar says they actually found some mashikas. They weighed them, and then they calculated the amount based upon the price of gold. And at the time that he did the calculations, it was about $50.
How long ago?
Oh, just a few years ago.
Wow, now
I know, it's gone up.
咁咧喺有啲
Maybe we
美
could say
國
we're in luck. I don't know.
有啲美國嘅學者咧就 亦都係抄過經典就去稱過，究竟喺佛制嘅時候嗰5個金幣大約係值幾多錢？就係我哋而家現今社會嘅美金50蚊，但係而家啲金升得咁犀利，我諗應該唔止。
So let's make it simple. There's too much, you can argue too much about this. We could go on for the whole night and for months on end if we wanted to. To make it simple, if you steal something big, worth more than like 400, 500 Hong Kong dollars, you've probably broken the vow. If it's less than that, you've done something bad, but it's what we call a downfall, not a defeat. It's bad, but it doesn't entirely break the vow.
其實呢個問題呢，仲係有好大嘅爭議。如果要拗呢，可以拗幾個月都得。簡單嚟講，如果我哋去偷嘢，係個價值係相當於我哋嘅港幣，大約係400-500蚊呢，超過400-500蚊呢，就叫做破咗條戒。如果係低過呢個數目呢，就係屬於叫做犯戒。
So, to make it simple, just don't steal anything. But you also have to intend to steal something. You're taking something with the intent to make it your own. And you have to do it with the intent to steal it. So if you think, oh, Carlson wouldn't mind, he'll lend me his, nice Montblanc pen or whatever he has. And then you take it thinking that he would give it to you anyways. That doesn't necessarily count as stealing. It's like, I need to get it and take it. Or if you borrow it and then forget to give it back, that doesn't count as stealing. So it's taking it with the intention to make it your own.
咁基本上呢，最好就係唔好去偷嘢。咁其實喺我哋顯宗嘅經度講呢，呢條戒叫做不與取，就係話你冇經過同意而又攞咗就叫犯呢條戒。首先就係話你要有一個動機，我要去偷呢樣嘢，你有個目標，你亦都有個動機。佢頭先舉個例子就係話，例如佢好中意我支筆，佢諗話我係咪都會送俾佢啦？咁呢個呢，就唔會話構成一個犯戒。同埋例如我哋借咗人哋啲嘢唔記得還，亦都唔算叫做犯戒。
So that's no stealing. Is that clear?
有冇清唔清楚呢條戒？
So sexual misconduct, this is the one that is different than the 8 precepts. And the reason it's different is that these are lay precepts. They're for lay people. And so it would be unreasonable to expect lay people to commit to celibacy. Otherwise there'd be no point in staying a lay person. Well, maybe there would be a point, but I don't know. At any rate, whether there's a point or not, it wouldn't be practical or it's not necessary. So it's just to avoid sexual misconduct.
咁第3條戒呢，就係不邪淫。咁呢個不邪淫呢，就唔同頭先八關齋戒嗰個係唔可以有任何淫欲。咁呢基本上就係話呢5戒呢，基本上就係佛陀在世就係為咗我哋在家嘅居士而去做嘅。咁有時有好多嘢呢係有開去，如果唔係就同出家冇乜分別。
And basically, by sexual misconduct, we mean sexual activity that is going to cause harm to someone else. That's the basic principle of it. So if you're committing adultery, then it's going to cause pain to other people. And that is the primary type of sexual misconduct that is intended.
咁呢個不邪淫呢，就係話，舉個例子就係話，我哋喺婚外嘅任何奸淫嘅行為都係叫做犯戒。就係話因為你咁做而令到有人唔開心或者受到你唔好嘅影響，都係叫犯戒。
And so in the scriptures, there are 4 different categories or 4 different things that make sexual activity sexual misconduct. And these are doing it with the wrong person, at the wrong time, wrong place, and the wrong orifice.
基本上點去構成犯呢4條戒呢？就係話你同唔應該做嗰個人去做。第二就係話喺唔適當嘅地方去做，唔適合嘅時間去做，同埋喺唔應該嘅位置入去。大家明唔明？基本上呢條戒呢，如果嚴格嚟講就係話，當你做嗰時候，女人係唔可以喺上邊，男人喺下邊，係都係叫做犯戒。
So the wrong person means someone who is like a child, someone who's in a relationship with someone else, or something like that. So children, people who are other people's spouses or partners. That's the wrong person.
咁第一條戒就話唔應該同唔適合嘅人做，就係話例如小孩同埋或者已經有配偶或者已婚。What about nowadays people that live together or boyfriend?
That's an interesting question. When people live together, yes. What about people who live together? I think if you are in a stable, committed relationship, it's probably okay.
我頭先問佢就係話同居嘅或者男女朋友，佢話如果嗰個人已經係一個好穩固嘅關係嘅時候咧，你去搞佢咧，就已經構成犯戒。
The second is the wrong time. The wrong time means, in particular, with a pregnant or nursing mother.
咁咩叫做唔適合嘅時間咧？就係話你對一個例如大咗肚嘅女人，或者一個已經係餵緊人奶嘅女人去做呢樣嘢，都係構成犯戒。
And the reason for this is that if you have a pregnant mother, it's said in the Buddhist scriptures that this causes pain to the fetus. And if you have a nursing mother needs to give her body energy to nursing the child she already has instead of getting pregnant. And so that's the wrong time.
咁點解話對呢兩類嘅人唔應該咧？就係話第一，你同一個已經懷孕嘅女人咧，你帶俾佢好大嘅痛苦。我諗係身體上嘅痛苦。第二就係話餵緊人奶嘅女人就係話，因為佢要留翻好多營養去做人奶出嚟俾個小朋友食。所以如果你同佢做呢樣嘢咧，就會影響到佢養育佢個小朋友嘅能力。
A wrong place means in the open, near stupas, in temples, and so forth, in the presence of Buddha statues and things like that. So you might want to be careful about where you put statues and paintings.
喺唔應該做嘅地方做咧，例如就係話喺冇遮冇掩嘅地方啊，即係好似喺條街度唔得啦，喺廟度唔得啦，同埋喺佛像面前唔得啦，同埋喺佛塔附近亦都唔得。所以咧，我哋喺屋企如果要擺呢啲咁嘅有關以上嘅嘢咧，就最好搞清楚你會唔會涉足到佢，先至好去擺。
And the wrong orifice means no anal or oral intercourse.
同埋喺唔應該做嘅地方做咧，就包括用口同埋我哋去大便嗰度。
I'm sorry. You thought you were coming to a Dharma center or something other. This is actually all stuff that is in the Treasury of Abhidharma and other Dharma texts. So I'm not trying to.
咁其實呢啲咧都唔係作出嚟嘅，全部都係喺阿毗達摩論嗰度講出嚟。
But basically, it's important that you know what makes what it is. But you need to know what the precept is if you're going to take the precept.
咁首先我哋如果要去受持呢五戒，我哋要搞清楚究竟我哋點樣會犯，點樣會破。然後先至去衡量自己可唔可以去持同埋受戒。
Now, the other question that comes up is maybe you take the precepts when you're single, and then you meet someone and you want to, get married or whatever with them. And then, is it okay for you to then start a sexual relationship?
咁嗱，佢可能你起初受呢條戒嘅時候，你係單身嘅。咁跟住你受呢條戒咧，就你遇到一個男女朋友。咁你覺得我如果做呢樣嘢算唔算犯戒呢？
The answer is yes, it is okay. It's fine. You're taking a vow not to do sexual misconduct, not a vow to be celibate.
咁其實係可以嘅，因為你同佢已經係發展一個關係，就唔係話佢唔係人哋嘅配偶或者人哋嘅女朋友。
And then, so that's the sexual misconduct. The next is telling lies.
咁跟住嗰條戒咧就係妄語戒。
We've been through that one. And the last is the no alcohol or intoxicants.
第五條戒咧就係話不可以飲酒同埋可以令到我哋神志不清嘅藥物。
Trungpa Rinpoche, when he talks with people about this, is a little bit more liberal with this precept than the scriptures are. He sometimes tells people that sometimes you're in a social situation where if you haven't got a drink in your hand, it just isn't okay socially. And Rinpoche has told people that in that situation, if you hold the drink and just take an occasional sip, it's okay. However, that is not what the scriptures say. So it's a little bit of a gray area.
咁其實第五條戒咧，創古寧波車其實係有開許嘅。咁佢就認為，如果你喺一個社交嘅場合，你係需要揸住杯酒而去同人傾偈啊，同埋去社交，咁咧係可以咁做嘅。如果你係揸住杯酒去慢慢飲，係可以開許嘅。創古寧波車話。
So these are the 5 precepts. Now, when you take the 5 precepts, you take them from the moment you go through the vow ceremony for the rest of your life. So the intention is to take them for the rest of your life. And so you take the 5 precepts and you have to hold them for the precepts you take, you have to hold them for the rest of your life. So before you have to take them, you have to think, am I able to keep them?
當我哋受個所謂呢啲5條戒咧，當我哋去譬如人哋開戒，我哋去受戒，就係話你要明白呢啲5條戒係終身嘅戒，係盡形壽，直至到你死嗰日，呢5條戒都喺度嘅。咁當我哋要去受呢條戒，你就要諗，我可唔可以終身都受持到呢？
Now, some people might find it easy to keep one precept and hard to keep another precept. For example, especially if you were to live in Europe, keeping the precept of no alcohol would be very, very difficult. So, for that reason, the Buddha allows you to take any number. You can take one of them, you can take 2 of them, you can take 3, 4, or 5. It's up to you how many precepts you want to take.
咁其實喺5戒裏邊，有啲人會覺得話呢條戒我比較容易持到，另外一啲戒咧就比較難持到。嗱，咁舉個例子就係話，如果你住喺歐洲，如果你唔飲酒咧，基本上係非常之難嘅，因為佢哋食親飯都會有酒嘅。大家要明白就係話呢5戒咧，你亦都可以揀嚟受。你認為我邊條可以終身都受持到嘅，你就揀；唔得嘅咧就可以唔受，可以揀1條、2條、3條、4條，或者全部受晒都得。
And so, when you take the vows, the way you take the vows is you go to someone who can give the vows. Generally, in the Tibetan tradition, we take vows from lamas.
咁基本上我哋要去受持呢5條戒，就係話要有一個阿闍黎，即係軌範師，譯翻中文叫做軌範師，或者一個上師去傳戒俾你。
The texts say that you can take the vows from any bhikshu, or some schools say any bhikshu, some schools say that people who have the 5 vows, so there may be lay practitioners who can give the vows as well.
咁基本上除咗以上咧，就話你亦都可以從一個比丘身上去受呢5條戒，甚至乎話你可以從一啲已經受咗5戒嘅在家居士傳俾你，亦都係可以。
But I think it is important that you take the vow from someone that you respect, because you're making a vow in someone who knows how to give the ritual. That's the other thing. They have to be a bhikshu or someone who has the vows, and someone who knows how to give the rituals. But it should be someone you respect, because they're like someone you're taking an oath with. And if you take an oath with someone you don't respect, it's not much weight. But if you take a vow with Rinpoche or the Karmapa, then it has a lot more weight for you in your mind.
咁首先話我哋要去受持呢5條戒，就係話你首先要搞清楚傳戒俾你嗰個人，你係咪真係尊重佢？第二就係話佢究竟自己有冇受晒呢啲戒，同埋佢識唔識得成個過程應該點去傳戒嗰個儀軌。咁當然啦，如果我哋受呢啲戒喺創古寧波車或者大寶法王身上咧，咁比較係穩陣同有份量。
And when you take the vows, if you're taking the vow either individually or in a small group, you have an opportunity to say, I want to take this 1 precept or 2 precepts, or I want to take 5 precepts, and the person giving the vow can recite the text appropriately.
咁基本上我哋去受呢啲戒嘅時候，可能係自己一個人或者一班人。咁咧到時傳戒嘅時候咧，佢亦都會講晒呢5條戒，就係話佢每講一條戒，你就要講，如果得嘅你就話能持。如果你係唔得嘅咧，你就唔好出聲。
And sometimes when they give the vows in a large group, like Rinpoche has given the vows to 100 people at a time, or last year at the Gyalwang Karmapa gave it to I don't know how many people, 500, 600, I don't know, people at once. And in a situation like that, the Lama will say, think about which precepts you are taking, and then recite the text of the vow, thinking that you are taking these precepts.
咁當我哋喺一大班人嗰度受戒嘅時候，例如好似創古寧波車傳戒係100或者超過100人，大寶法王傳戒可能係500-600人。咁通常咧個上師就會傳戒俾你，嗰個上師就會問你首先要諗諗你自己受到邊條戒，然後先至好去接受。
In any case, the Lama will tell you to do, so you don't have to worry about it so much.
咁到時個上師會話俾你聽應該點做，所以而家唔需要擔心。
And so I think you might think to yourself, oh, I'm going to take all 5 vows, but then find later that you can't necessarily keep them all. So it might be good, if you're starting out in the very beginning, to take the ones you know you can take, and then you can take additional precepts later.
咁其實話有好多人就一諗都唔諗一次過就去受晒嗰5條戒，咁受完之後先發覺，哇！原來裏邊有啲我做唔到，咁點算呢？咁所以喺我哋去受戒之前呢，就係話你諗清楚邊啲係真係自己做到先至會去受。
And you shouldn't think to yourself that it is better to take 5 precepts than 1, but you shouldn't think that taking 1 precept is bad or less good somehow. This is strange. At any rate, it's like Rinpoche always says, if you do 100%, it's wonderful. If you do 50%, it's wonderful. If you do 1%, it's wonderful. If you take 5 precepts, it is wonderful. If you take 1 precept, it is wonderful.
咁咧，首先我哋就要搞清楚自己係咪真係適合去受呢啲戒。例如，創學寧波車成日都講，哇！如果你真係做100%，非常之好。但係你做到50%都係非常之好，你做到1%亦都係非常之好。咁點解咁講呢？就係話，如果你真係受持到嗰5條戒清淨嘅，當然係非常之好。但係如果我能力唔得，我只可以受2條3條。如果你真係持得清淨嘅，亦都係非常之好。甚至乎話只可以持1條戒，但係如果你嗰條戒持得清淨，亦都係非常之好。因為每持1條戒就有5個戒神呢，就一路護持住你嘅。咁你受持晒5條戒呢，就有25個戒神。但係你一破呢，佢就走㗎啦。
And the reason for this is if you take 5 precepts, this is the cause for you and all other sentient beings to achieve Buddhahood. And if you take 1 precept, it is also the cause for you and all other sentient beings to achieve Buddhahood. So either one is wonderful.
咁無論你受1條又好，受晒5條又好，其實呢，你受每一條戒清淨嘅呢，對你同埋眾生都仲係一個解脫嘅因。
And if you don't feel like you can keep any of the 5 precepts for your whole life, then you can take the fasting vows for a period of 1 day, or you can take the Mahayana Sojong vows.
如果我哋發覺基本上我哋5條戒都冇可能終生去行持嘅時候，我哋可以考慮下1日嘅八關齋戒，或者係千手千眼觀音裏邊嘅清淨戒，基本上係同八關齋戒一樣，因為係比較短嘅時間，咁你係應該可以做到。但係終生嘅，你哋係要諗清楚。
It's important to only take vows that you really think you can keep.
最重要嘅就係話，我去受戒就係要持到戒，因為其實有句説話就係話，受戒容易，持戒難，持得清淨難上難。咁大家要諗清諗楚。
Now, there's actually another type of vow that most of you here, if not everyone here, has already taken. And you might be wondering, where does this type of vow fit in here?
咁有時我哋會諗，其實呢5條戒究竟適合喺邊啲地方呢？
And so this vow is the refuge vow.
咁呢個呢，就係我哋嘅皈依戒。
And so the refuge vow is actually considered a type of the lay precepts.
咁其實皈依戒呢，亦都係俾我哋在家居士裏邊一種自律嘅規條。
So actually, there's a little bit of a difference. There's going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And there's taking the vow of going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
因為我哋受呢個皈依戒就係話，我哋係要受持佛法僧三寶。
And so, going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is realizing that only the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can give you true protection from the sufferings of samsara.
因為呢，我哋皈依三寶就係話，我哋要確切去認定呢，係三寶就係將會帶俾我哋可以從呢個輪迴得到解脫。
But taking the vow of going for refuge means committing yourself to only going to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for refuge.
咁受呢個皈依戒就係話，其實盡形壽亦都係我哋有生之年，我哋係只可以深信三寶。
Now here, I think there's a little difference between the Chinese tradition and the Tibetan tradition.
咁基本上喺我哋中國嘅顯宗嘅傳統同埋藏傳佛教嘅傳統係有啲分別。
In the Chinese tradition, people will go to a master and they will prostrate to the master and go for refuge with many different masters. And they do this many, many times.
咁基本上喺我哋漢傳佛教呢，就係話我哋去揾一個適合嘅出家人上師，跟住我哋去頂禮佢，咁我哋去接受咗佢嘅皈依，可以做好多次，對唔同嘅上師皈依好多次。
In the Tibetan tradition, we also continually go for refuge, but we also have a special vow ceremony for taking the refuge vow that we generally do once.
咁喺西藏藏傳佛教傳統咧，就係話，當我哋去接受呢個皈依嘅時候，從一位上師，我哋係只係做一次。
And so that's the refuge ceremony that Rinpoche does when he cuts a little bit of your hair and gives you a Dharma name. So that's the actually taking the refuge vow.
咁嗱，例如好似我哋歸依松果靈波車，咁去到佢個法座面前，佢幫我哋剪少少頭髮，跟住俾個法名，俾個歸依證我哋。
So actually, you only need to take the refuge vow one time, although here in Hong Kong, people tend to do it many times.
咁基本上咧，歸依就係歸依一次。其實我哋歸依一次，亦都係歸依晒所有嘅佛法僧三寶。咁但係喺香港嘅傳統咧，啲人就係成日都中意歸依好多好多次。
I have talked to people who said, "Oh yes, I've got 7 refuge names."
咁有啲人就話：哇，我有7個法名。
And I'm one of the people who has to write out all those name cards, so I was like, "Oh no."
咁有啲人甚至乎會擺喺佢自己張卡片，將所有名度。
It's okay. Actually, you receive the refuge vow the first time. The other times, you're repeating it, so it's not a bad thing to do, but you've already taken the vow.
咁其實咧係做一次就可以噶啦，但係如果你再做咧，亦都係可以係一個增上緣。
So when you take the vow, then actually there are precepts that go along with the refuge vow.
咁其實喺歸依戒裏邊咧，亦都係有戒要守嘅。
So there are 11 precepts.
係有11條戒咁多。
It sounds like a lot.
好似好多。
But actually, it's not so hard. There are 3 things that that you must do, 3 things you must not do, and then there are sort of 5 sort of general points, precepts.
呢11條戒裏邊咧，基本上有3條我哋係不可以做，有3條就係一定要做，跟住嗰5條就係話一般嘅戒。
And so the first are the 3 things that you should not do.
咁第一就係話有3樣嘢我哋係唔應該做嘅。
There's one of these each for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha.
咁第一就係佛法僧。
And so the first is, once you have gone for refuge to the Buddha, do not go for refuge in Brahma or any other worldly god.
首先我哋歸依佛之後咧，我哋係唔可以歸依梵天或者任何仲喺輪迴嘅神祇。
So basically, this means the Buddha is the one who has taught us the path. We go for refuge to the Buddha. He taught the path that will bring us to lasting happiness and Buddhahood. And so we know that he's taught the path. Brahma or any other worldly gods, the various local protectors and spirits, they don't have the instructions to bring us to Buddhahood. They can give us temporary happiness, but not ultimate happiness. And so, for that reason, we don't go for refuge to those who can only give us temporary protection. Instead, we need to go for refuge to the teacher who has taught us the true path.
首先大家要明白，點解要歸依佛呢？就係話佛陀係一個證悟、一個自覺覺他、覺行圓滿嘅人。咁樣佛陀先至有真正嘅道路，係可以幫我哋輪迴中得到解脫，直至到成佛道。至於梵天未出輪迴嘅鬼神，佢只不過係可以俾到我哋暫時嘅快樂同埋保護，佢唔可以好究竟令我哋從輪迴中得到解脫。
And once you have taken refuge in the Dharma, then you should abandon harming any sentient beings.
歸依法呢，就係話，首先歸依法之後呢，我哋係唔可以傷害任何有情眾生。
And the reason for this is that the essence of the Dharma is non-violence.
咁基本上佛法嘅精華就係教我哋唔可以暴力去解決問題。
The third is, having gone for refuge in the Sangha, do not rely upon non-Buddhist friends.
咁我哋歸依僧咧，就話佢呢度講嘅 non-Buddhist friend 即係唔係佛教嘅朋友。咁當然我哋唔可以話唔同佛教嘅朋友做朋友啦。其實呢度講咧，應該係講唔同外道做朋友。
Now, this does not mean that you cannot have non-Buddhist friends. It does not mean that you can't go to dinner with non-Buddhist friends. It doesn't mean anything like that.
咁但係正如我頭先所講咧，就話我哋唔係歸依咗僧之後咧，就唔可以同唔係佛教徒嘅朋友食飯，唔同佢哋做朋友。
It means that when you are looking for someone to help bring yourself true and lasting happiness, you should look for someone who can actually do that. A member of the Sangha, a Lama, or you can also think about all the members of the Dharma Center, the community, so that you can all work together and help each other. It means that, if you want to help yourself find happiness, and we know that we've decided the path for this is the Buddhist path, then we aren't going to go off and talk to a Mormon about this.
基本上呢條戒就係話，如果我哋想離苦得樂從佛法 中得到利益呢，其實我哋嘅朋友應該係多啲係僧人啦，甚至乎係咁講師兄弟啦、佛教徒啦，因為我哋可以從大家喺一齊去修持佛法中得到快樂同埋喜悅，而最終呢亦都係可以從輪迴中得到解脫。
But sometimes, actually, you can listen to what other people have to say. Sometimes you'll have conversations with people who aren't Buddhist, and they'll have really insightful and good things to say. And so you can listen to them, but always remember that the true refuge is the three jewels.
咁當然啦，我哋同唔係佛教徒嘅朋友傾偈，亦都係可以嘅。但係真正嘅真理呢，我哋係應係從佛法嗰度揾到。
So those are the three things you should not do.
咁嗱，以上嗰三樣呢，就係我哋唔應該做嘅。
Then there are three things that you should do.
咁跟住落嚟就係話三樣我哋一定要做嘅。
And these three things that you should do are basically training yourself and paying respect to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
咁呢三樣嘢就係話會令到我哋對三寶呢係咁有一個尊敬崇敬嘅心。
So the first of these is for the Buddha. Treat all representations of the Buddha with respect, even a small broken fragment of a tiny statue.
咁首先就係話我哋一定要對所有佛嘅形象、佛同菩薩嘅形象一定要尊重，例如唐卡啦、佛像啦，甚至乎一個細嘅佛牌渣渣嘅碎片，我哋都要咁尊重。
Now sometimes people wonder about this one, because we see these statues of the Buddhas and all these bodhisattvas and so forth, and we wonder, well, why is it that we need to pay respect to those?
咁有好多人會問話，只不過係個佛像一啲唐卡啲畫，點解我哋要去尊重佢呢？
Some people say, why bother to pay respect to a statue because it's just made out of metal, or it's made out of stone, or it's made out of wood, or something like that. What good can paying respect to a statue do for us?
咁首先有好多人會問話，點解我哋要對呢啲佛像，有啲係石做嘅、金屬做嘅，甚至乎木做嘅，點解我哋要去尊敬佢呢？如果我哋去拜一尊咁嘅佛像，對我哋有咩好處呢？
The reason we pay respect to statues or to paintings of Buddhas is not because they're made out of metal or made out of wood or made out of fabric. That is not why we pay respect to them.
咁首先我哋要去尊重佛菩薩嘅形象，就唔係話因為佢只不過係一個公仔，或者佢係用唔同嘅質料嚟做嘅。
The reason we pay respect to them is because they have a particular shape, a particular form, the form of the Buddha. This reminds us, when we see the form of the Buddha, then we can think about the qualities of the Buddha. We feel faith in the Buddha. This reminds us of the qualities of the Buddhist practice and the teachings of the Buddha. So that is why we treat the statues and the paintings with respect.
咁點解我哋要對呢啲咁嘅有形有相嘅佛像要去尊敬呢？咁其實就係話，當我哋睇到呢啲佛像嘅時候，我哋就會諗起佛陀佢嘅品質、佢嘅人格，從而呢係對佢嘅品質同個人格呢係產生信心，而對佢嘅教法呢亦都會去行持。
So because they have this power to affect us in this way and to inspire us, that's why we pay respect for all the statues and representations of the Buddha, even the broken fragments of a figurine.
其實話我哋去要尊重呢啲佛菩薩嘅形象，就係話，因為佢對我哋真正係有一個正面嘅影響，我哋從而睇到佢嘅法相呢，可以令到我哋生一個歡喜心去修行。甚至乎係一個佛像一小塊碎片，我哋都係要同樣尊重。
And so the second thing we should pay respect to, or that we need to do, is we need to pay respect to all the representations of the Dharma, even a single letter written on paper.
嗱，跟住呢，我哋歸依法之後呢，我哋一定要尊重所有經律論三藏十二部裏邊嘅一切典籍，甚至乎係話一頁佛經嘅其中一個字，我哋都要同樣尊重。
Now the actual Dharma is the understanding that we have of the Dharma, in particular the understanding that noble beings have of the Dharma in their hearts. That's the true Dharma. But what represents that are all the books that we write down the words of the Dharma in.
咁點解我哋要去尊重法呢？咁其實話，因為我哋從理解佛法就係要從呢啲典籍嗰度開始，所以呢，我哋對呢啲典籍呢係要絕對嘅尊重。
And so we need to treat these books, papers, texts, and so forth with great respect, which means that when, we don't place Dharma texts on the floor, we don't step over them, we don't sit on them, you treat them respectfully, you treat them nicely.
咁我哋尊重佛法就係話，甚至乎係一本書、一本經，甚至乎係一張紙，我哋都要攞絕對嘅誠敬心同埋尊重心去對待。我哋唔可以將佢擺喺地下啦，唔可以坐喺佢上面啦，同埋唔可以攬過佢，因為中心成日都有呢啲問題出現嘅。
And so we respect these representations because they can bring us to the realization of the actual Dharma ourselves.
咁點解我哋要尊重佢呢？因為透過呢啲咁嘅典籍呢，係最終可以令我哋得到解脫。
And the third thing is to treat the Sangha with respect. In particular, treat with respect anyone who wears the saffron robes of an individual who has gone forth. So basically treating monks and nuns with respect. And I almost feel like here in Hong Kong it's almost unnecessary to say this because you all are so wonderful at treating the members of the Sangha with respect.
第三呢，就係話我哋要對所有僧團僧人呢，係要有一個好大嘅誠敬心，無論係男眾或者女眾，或者係穿搭衣嘅，我哋都要對佢哋有最高嘅尊重。咁上司亦都話喺香港呢，特別我呢個中心呢，大部分嘅會員呢，都係做得好好。
The reason it's important to pay the Sangha respect is because it's the Sangha that preserves the teaching. It's what we say in Tibetan. The foundation of the teachings is the Sangha. And so that is why it's important to respect the members of the Sangha as well. However, when you're paying respect to the members of the Sangha, of course, there are good monks, there are bad monks, there are good nuns, and there are bad nuns. It's important to respect them whether they're good monks or bad monks, good nuns or bad nuns.
點解話我哋要絕對尊重僧寶呢？就係話因為僧團呢，佢哋就係保留住佛法一路咁傳落去，同埋呢僧團呢，亦都係佛法嘅基礎。所以呢，我哋無論有時睇到一啲出家人比較有威儀或者做得好嘅，咁無論佢係好與唔好，男眾或者女眾，我哋都要同樣咁尊重佢。
And the reason is that it's not the individual that you're paying respect to, it is the Sangha that you are paying respect to.
因為我哋唔係淨係對某一個人去尊重，我哋係代表我哋對所有嘅僧團都尊重。
And so these are the three of paying respect to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
以上呢三樣呢，就係話我哋要絕對尊重佛法僧。
Now, so those are the three things you shouldn't do, the three things you should do, and then there are the 5 common precepts. They're called common because they're a mixture of things to do and not to do.
咁講咗3樣，邊啲係應該做嘅，唔應該做嘅。咁跟住落嚟就講5樣冇咁重要嘅。
The first of these is, first, do not abandon the 3 jewels, even at the cost of your life or for great material rewards.
咁第一條戒呢，就係話，我哋寧捨生命，絕對不離棄佛法僧三寶。
So if someone says, I will give you $1 trillion if you give up the Buddhism and become Christian or become Muslim or become a Druid or something.
咁甚至乎話有人話俾1兆咁多錢嘅你都係唔可以離棄佛法僧三寶。
Now, if someone says that to you, you can live the rest of this life in great luxury, and it's happiness in this life. So if someone says, I'll give you a lot of money if you become a Christian or if you become a Muslim, and you say, okay, I'm going to give up the 3 jewels and take the money.
即係我哋係唔可以為咗利益去離棄三寶，變成一個異教徒。
If they give you enough money, you might be set for the rest of this life.
因為你收咗呢啲錢呢，你嘅下半世就會好坎坷。
But you're in a very bad way for future lives.
同埋喺你未來世亦都係會好唔好。
So a short-term gain and a long-term loss.
即係貪眼前，為咗小嘅唔見咗大嘅。
What you have to remember is that the Buddha's bank of karma pays very good interest.
因為你哋要明白，冇人俾得更多利息，俾三寶俾得更多利息我哋。
There's a compound interest. So do not abandon the 3 jewels, even at the cost of your life. So it may be temporary hardship, but ultimate rewards.
基本上就係話，眼前嘅嘢，其實最終係令我哋得到最大嘅受益。
Now the second of the precepts is, the common precepts is, the 3 jewels are just as important for your mind as food and drink are for your physical body. So do not cast them aside and look for another worldly method.
咁首先我哋要明白就係三寶喺我哋心靈上嚟講呢，就係等於我哋嘅飲食對我哋嘅身體幾重要。所以呢，我哋無論如何呢，都係唔可以離棄三寶。
So basically saying, it doesn't mean that you can't do worldly things. Of course you can do worldly things to like take medicine and so forth. That's fine. It's just don't give up the Dharma. Don't give up the three jewels in order to do worldly things.
即係唔係話叫我哋乜嘢世間法都唔可以去做，但係我哋可以去做世間法，甚至乎話有啲藥食咗，咁但係話最終我哋個心係唔可以離棄三寶，唔係話任何世間法都唔可以去做。
The third is that whenever you eat or drink anything, offer the first portion to the three jewels.
咁喺我哋每日嘅飲食呢，我哋都會將我哋嘅第一份呢，就係供養俾三寶。
So this is where we, Namo Bhagavate Samaruva, no, that's so for then. Tumbalame Zanjirimbo Yobalame, that, right?
咁嗱，其實大家都好清楚，我哋係一個共食嘅讚係可以念嘅4句啊。咁我諗大家都識嘅呢度啊。
I know some people who take the easy route. They go Om Ahom.
甚至乎話 Om Ahom 都得。
Fourth, since you know the benefits of going for refuge in the three jewels, always keep them in mind and encourage others to go for refuge.
我哋時常咧都要將三寶擺我哋嘅心度，亦都係應該去鼓勵人哋去皈依同埋信佛。
Now, encouraging others to go for refuge in the three jewels doesn't mean that you should stand on the street corners handing out leaflets.
亦都唔代表話我哋要喺街度派傳單啊、念戒招啊，你快啲皈依啦。
We Buddhists are more laid back than that.
我哋係需要時間日子去導人哋皈依。
So what it means is, if someone talks with you about something and you feel like it would be helpful for that person, and they'll be able to hear you and listen, then you say, why don't you think about going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and explain the benefits of going for refuge.
首先嗰個人要肯聽，同埋你可以同佢解釋皈依三寶有咩好處，有咩利益。
And then the fifth is that whatever direction you're going, remember the Buddha of that direction and pay homage to that Buddha.
咁其實咧，皈依三寶咧就係話，我哋無論去到東南西北同埋中方5個方向，我哋無論喺邊個方向都要向嗰度嘅佛頂禮。即係東方就阿閦佛啦，不動如來；南方寶生佛，西方阿彌陀佛，北方不空成就佛，中方毗盧遮羅佛，大日如來。我哋都要向嗰個方向去頂禮。
Basically, if you're going west, you think about Amitabha and pay Amitabha. If you're going east, you think about Akshobhya. If you're going north, you think about Amoga City. If you're going south, you think about Ratnasambhava.
正如我頭先講過，嗰5方佛就係嗰5個方向，我哋要向佢頂禮。
If you don't know what direction you're going, I'm not sure what you should think about.
但係如果你自己都冇晒方向感咧，咁佢都唔知咯。
For some reason, I find it harder in Hong Kong where there are all these skyscrapers where I can't see the sky.
特別喺香港，因為太多高樓大廈遮晒嗰啲日影，變咗我哋都分唔清邊度係。
Maybe in that case, just think about the Buddha of this, in the middle of Vairochana.
所以喺呢個時候咧，最好就係諗中方啦，毗盧遮羅佛、大日如來。
And if you can't remember a specific Buddha, or if you don't remember the names of the 5 Buddhas, just think about the Buddha. In other words, the point is to remember the Buddha.
其實如果你唔記得邊個方向係邊尊佛，唔緊要，其實個心最緊要就係有佛喺度。
So now we've talked about the lay precepts. You can take 1 to 5 of them, and there are also the refuge vow. These are all different types of the lay precepts, right? The question is, well, how long do you have them?
咁跟住嗱，我哋頭先講過舉事5戒啦，咁而家講呢個皈依戒，咁我哋又要去守去行持佢幾耐咧？
Basically, when you take the vows, you should take them with the intention to keep them for the rest of your life.
基本上我哋去受呢個皈依嘅時候，就係話我哋要守呢啲皈依戒，直至到我命終。
So once you take the vows, unless you do something to break the vows, then you have them until you die, or until you decide that you are unable to keep them. If you feel like you are unable to keep the vows, then you can return the vows.
其實呢啲皈依戒咧，就係話你受皈依嘅時候，你一定要諗話我要行持一生嘅。咁如果萬一我守唔到點咧，其實係可以捨戒嘅。
So returning the vows means you go to a lama, or if there is no lama or monk around, then you go to someone who understands, and you say, I have these vows, but I can no longer keep them. I wish to return the vows.
咁當你想赦戒嘅時候呢，當然最好就係去揾出家人啦、上司或者委辦師，咁或者明白你講咩嘅人，你可以同佢講，咁就可以赦咗個戒。
Now, if you do this while you're in the right mind, then at that point the vows are cancelled.
咁如果你唔係喺你正常嘅思維之下呢，去受呢啲戒呢，呢啲戒係赦係冇咗㗎。
So those are the two primary ways that the vows are canceled: dying and by giving them back. The other way that you have to understand or know about is that if you develop a wrong view, then your vow is also broken.
基本上點為之冇咗啲皈依戒呢？赦咗皈依戒，第一就係你死啦，第二就係你赦戒啦，第三就係話你起邪見，捨正見，取邪見。
And in particular, the wrong view in question is the idea that there is no karma cause and effect, that you can do whatever you want and it will have no effect in the future.
咁咩叫做起邪見呢？就係話第一不信因果啦，不信輪迴啦，覺得我做咩嘢係唔會有報應嘅，咁呢個就算叫邪見。
So you have the vows. These are that's the length of time you have it until you die or give it back or develop a wrong view or such. So the question now is, how do you keep the vows? How do you maintain the vows?
咁我哋點去守護呢啲皈依戒呢？
The main point about it is that you keep them by being mindful, aware, and careful.
咁點去護持呢啲戒就係話我哋成日都要有個覺性心，同埋成日都係要有個警惕心，好小心咁去記住佢哋。
And so being mindful means remembering, basically. So it means remembering, oh, I have these vows, I should not kill or steal.
正如我頭先所講嘅，就係要時常去記掛住呢啲咁嘅戒，就係話成日都有個警醒心，所以你有個警惕俾自己話，哦，呢啲嘢我係唔應該做嘅。
The second aspect is being aware. So knowing what's happening, knowing what you're thinking.
咁第二就係話我哋成日都要有個覺知，就係話我究竟喺度做緊乜嘢，我而家做緊啲咩嘢。
And the third is being careful.
第三就係要好小心。
So being just careful is, I think, easy to understand. Sometimes it's hard to keep vows, especially when you first have them. You forget you've got it, and then you do it. Eventually you get in the habit. You have a habit of keeping the vow, and it's easier to keep it.
初中我哋受咗呢啲戒呢，就係話我好容易唔記得。咁但係話日久之後呢，我哋慢慢會養成一個習慣，咁好自然呢，我哋就會守護到呢啲戒。
And so these are 5 vows that many lay people are able to keep. So if you can, it's good to take them. If you aren't, take the ones that you're able to keep, or just take the one-day-long vows.
咁如果我哋覺得嘅5戒我哋係可以做到嘅，咁我哋盡量去做。如果唔得嘅，我哋可以受持呢個8關齋戒。
But even when you have the vows, sometimes you do things wrong. Sometimes you forget. Sometimes something happens. You may not do something that breaks the vow entirely, but you might have the vow not to kill, and then a mosquito comes along and...
有時呢啲戒呢，我哋係好容易就唔記得咗就犯咗。例如我哋俾隻蚊叮嘅時候，我哋好容易就話一嘢就拍死咗佢先。
So, what do you do then?
咁跟住我哋要點做呢？
Well, basically, with the vows, if you have done a downfall, that is something that bends it but doesn't break it, then you can do confession. And a confession is you go to a lama and you say, I have broken this precept, I've done this downfall, and that. Or you can also use one of the confession practices.
咁如果我哋犯咗戒之後，我哋應該點做呢？首先我哋係要去懺悔啦。我哋係可以揾上司同佢講啦。
And one of the best practices for this is the 35 Buddha practice, where you recite the sutra in 3 sections, imagining that you are in the presence of the 35 Buddhas, and imagine that you are confessing your downfall in front of these Buddhas.
上司講就話，當我哋懺悔嘅時候呢，其實就叫做一個叫做遍行對治力，因為懺悔咧要具足4種力量咧，先可以懺得甩啲罪障。咁第一個就叫做遍行對治力。咁上司就話，例如好似35佛，如果我哋去誦呢個35佛呢，就可以幫我哋清除我哋嘅罪業同埋我哋犯戒嘅錯。
I think that maybe you already do this practice here in the center from time to time. Or if you don't, Lama Sunam and the other lamas can tell you how to do the practice.
佢相信好多人都喺呢個中心咧已經係做過呢個35佛。如果你哋係唔清楚嘅，可以問我哋嘅住持喇嘛、喇嘛蘇南或者喇嘛豆啊。
And when you make the confession, one of the most important factors is to think, I am not going to do this again, to make the strong resolve, I am never going to break this precept again.
第二種力咧，每個法本都有唔同嘅講法，就叫做追悔力，亦都叫不二過之力，就係話我哋懺悔嘅時候係發誓。以後唔再做，懺過去之左作，悔以後不再作，就叫做懺悔。
But then there's the problem. What happens if you completely break the vows? For example, you murder someone.
咁例如，如果我哋真係完全破咗一條戒，例如我哋真係去殺咗個人，咁應該點做咧
？At that point, you have broken your vows. It is very bad karma.
第一就係話你破呢條戒，跟住對你日後嘅宿業咧係會有好大影響。
It is very important to confess this, and so using the 35 Buddha practice or any other confession or purification practice is very important.
咁喺呢個時候咧，最重要嘅咧就係要馬上去懺悔，例如35佛或者金剛薩埵，其實好多法門。
With the 5 lay precepts, with the 24-hour precepts, once you've broken them, you've broken for them for that period. On another day, you can take them again.
咁嗱，好似5戒咁啦，就係話呢啲係終身戒，但係好似其他8關齋戒嗰時候，如果我哋破咗咧，我哋第日可以重新再受過。
And when you take them again, you have the resolve, I'm going to do better this time.
當你重受嘅時候咧，你一定要同自己講，今次我一定要做得更好。
With the 5 lay precepts, when you take them, if you break them, that is by breaking one of the 4 root precepts, then you've broken them, you should confess it, and if you want to take them again, you can take them again.
咁喺5戒裏邊咧，其實咧前邊嗰4條戒咧就叫做4重戒，亦都叫4根本戒，亦都有個佛學上嘅名詞叫做波羅夷。波羅夷即係解斷頭，即係一個人冇咗個頭一定死嘅。喺呢啲情況之下咧，我哋破咗咧係可以重受。
This is different than like the bhikshu vows. So for me as a bhikshu, if I break one of the 4 root precepts, I'm done, no more. But for the lay precepts, it's different. If you break one of the 4 root precepts, you should regret it and confess it. And then if you feel like you can hold the vows, you should take them again.
如果係出家人犯咗呢4重戒咧，就得叫做波羅夷，即係斷頭係冇得救嘅。咁但係如果喺我哋凡夫嚟講咧，受咗呢5戒，如果我哋破咗戒咧，我哋係可以重受。
Sometimes when you hear Rinpoche talking about the vows, he talks about the vows of individual liberation as being like a porcelain cup. If the porcelain cup falls on the ground, then it's broken.
我哋科車亦都曾經開示過，喺呢啲別解脫戒度咧，如果你係破咗個戒咧，就係等於一隻杯跌咗落地下碎咗，係冇得補救嘅。
So the bhikshu vows are like an irreplaceable cup that you can't buy another. The lay vows, you can buy another one.
咁咧，但係喺出家人嚟講咧，就係冇得再買嗰隻杯。但係喺我哋在家居士嚟講係買嗰隻。
So let's see, that is going through how to keep the vows. There's one more important point. When you take vows, you're taking vows for yourself. You're not taking vows for other people. When you're with a group of people and you've all taken vows together, you keep your own vows, not someone else's.
大家要記住一點就係話，當我哋去受呢啲戒嘅時候，係為咗我哋自己終身去受。至於我哋係有一班人去受戒嘅時候，你就唔好去話，原來你受呢條戒，你犯戒去抽盡人，去睇人唔順眼，搞掂自己就得啦。
If you spend all your time thinking about how other people are keeping their vows, all you're doing is being judgmental, and you're in a much more likely to end up breaking your own vows yourself.
即係如果我哋成日去睇人哋受咗咩戒而去抽秤人咧，最終犯咗戒破戒嗰個係你自己咯。
And so it's important to really only to not meddle too much with other people.
即係兩句説話：若真修道人，不見世間過；若真修道人，常見自己過。喺六祖壇經度出嚟。
Sometimes you might have someone whom you've taken vows with. If you've got a 24-hour vow and you're taking the 8 precepts and it's 6 in the evening and someone is about to eat a banana,
即係喺八關齋戒嘅時候就係話，喺唔適合嘅時候，可能係食咗隻香蕉。
Then at that point, you can say, wait a minute, remember you took that vow.
咁你唔可以指住佢話，喂，你唔好食啊，你守咗呢條戒㗎，咁我哋係唔應該咁做。
But it's not like you should be always looking at other people. Are they eating something? Or
即係唔好成日諗話，你而家又食緊乜啊？係咪啱適合嘅時候食啊？唔好去抽秤人，唔好睇人唔順眼咯。
It's the vow of individual liberation. We're primarily taking it to control our own selves.
因為大家要明白係叫做別解脫戒，即係個別嘅解脫，你就唔好理人，係照顧好自己嘅心，最緊要係自己唔好犯，唔好理人哋有冇犯。
That's the essence of the vow is to give up harming other people and the basis for harming other people.
咁首先你要明白呢個戒嘅精華就係話，首先我哋係唔可以去傷害任何個眾生，同埋避免去傷害任何嘅有情眾生。
Another aspect about these vows of individual liberation is that there are two different attitudes we can take them, or two different motivations we can have when we take them.
咁其實喺有兩種態度、兩種動機之下，我哋會去受呢啲戒。
The first attitude is the attitude of renunciation.
第一就係話我哋要修復。
And so renunciation means that we're taking the vows not to help ourselves now, not to help ourselves in the next life, but we are taking the vows in order to free ourselves from samsara. That is the true motivation of renunciation, and that is the least sort of motivation that we should have when we take the vows.
咁最基本就係受呢條戒，就係話我為咗自己，我希望自己從輪迴中得到解脫而去受。
The other type of motivation we can have is the motivation of bodhicitta. We can think that we're taking these vows not just to free ourselves from samsara, but to free all sentient beings from samsara.
咁第二種動機咧就係話，我去受呢條戒，唔單止係為咗我自己，我亦都係要發菩提心，去為咗無量個眾生得到解脫而去受。
And if we take the vows with the attitude of bodhicitta, then they become Mahayana vows.
咁如果我哋係攞呢個動機去受戒咧，咁就係變成咗菩薩戒啦。我哋係行緊菩薩道啦。
So I think that is most of the important points about the different types of vows of individual liberation, the 8 precepts we spoke about last week and reviewed tonight, and the 5 precepts in the refuge vow. So that's the main points about these.
咁所有嘅重點咧，關於別解脫戒裏邊嘅八關齋戒啦、居士五戒啦嘅重點已經講晒啦。
But maybe some of you have some doubts or questions, and so if you do, please ask. Yes?
So if I'm not a vegetarian, will I be breaking the refuge vow or the 5 lay precept?
Neither. The vegetarianism is something that the Buddha taught in the Mahayana Sutras. And so when you take the 8 fasting precepts for one day, or if you take the 5 precepts, then eating meat does not necessarily break that. Now, if the meat is specifically killed for you, or you think that it is specifically killed for you, then it is breaking the precept on killing. Otherwise, it is not. If you are taking the Mahayana Sojong vows, then you have to be a vegetarian. But that's a slightly different vow. We spoke about that last week.
咁頭先嗰位師兄就問，咁佢話如果佢食肉，算唔算犯咗八關齋戒或者犯咗5戒呢？咁上師就話係唔算嘅。咁基本上，如果你食嘅肉嗰個眾生唔係為你而殺，你亦都睇唔到佢被殺嗰個時候嘅情形，同埋你亦都聽唔到佢被殺嘅時候嗰種悲鳴叫聲，我哋就叫做三淨肉。如果我哋食呢啲三淨肉呢，就係唔算係犯戒嘅。咁但係如果喺大乘嘅戒律嚟講呢，就係話，例如千手千眼觀音閉關裏邊嘅清淨戒。如果我哋食肉呢，就係犯戒，係一定要持素嘅。
The reason for being vegetarian, as the Gyalwang Karmapa has explained it, is that if we are not vegetarian, then whether or not we've committed an actual karmic act of killing, then it is not being compassionate. And as Mahayana practitioners, we need to practice compassion, so being vegetarian is better.
咁其實大寶法王亦都開示過。咁佢話喺我哋學大乘佛法呢，基本上如果我哋係唔食肉持素，係因為基於慈悲心，唔想食眾生嘅肉而去持呢條戒。
Next question.
I want to know, I work in a church school, belong to the church. So I need to go to the church 2 or times every year. Do I break the rules?
I don't think so. I think if you end up, you have to go to the church for your practice. If you're going there with the idea, I'm going to go and, accept Jesus Christ as my Savior and all this, then you're breaking the refuge vow. If you're going thinking, I'm paying respect, they've got a good tradition, it helps people be kind and helpful, I don't think there's any conflict there.
頭先嗰位師兄就話佢喺間學校度做嘢，而家間學校係天主教或者基督教學校，所以佢有機會咧係需要入教堂，咁算唔算犯戒咧？咁上次開始就話咁係唔算犯戒嘅。佢話除非你係入到間教堂去放棄佛教而去轉投另外一個宗教，咁就算係犯戒。如果我哋只不過係一個教堂，純粹係因為我哋嘅工作或者我哋要做啲嘢去利益眾生、幫助眾生，係絕對係可以接受嘅。
There's no need to be a militant Buddhist.
即係我哋唔需要太介懷。
Sorry, on the same subject, I read in one of Rinpoche's teachings that you're also allowed to pray in a church if that's beneficial for you. So I'm not sure I understood correctly.
I'm not sure which teaching you're speaking about, but I think that if we understand, for example, with a church, this is the most common one in Hong Kong and many Western countries as well. If you go into a church and if you think about Jesus, of course, he was obviously a great being and probably a great bodhisattva. And so if you think of Jesus as being like a bodhisattva and recite prayers without understanding, I don't think it's necessarily a problem. If you think that following the Christian, that's different than thinking that you're following the whole Christian path. In other words, it's fine to be respectful and to think about, it's good to think well about other religions. They all have got wonderful qualities. It's good to be respectful of them. But we have to understand where the ultimate path lies.
咁頭先嗰位師兄就話，如果佢去入到一間教堂，見到耶穌啊、上帝嘅形象啊，咁算唔算犯戒咧？咁就上次開始嘅話，如果我哋入到一間教堂，甚至乎我哋見到耶穌嘅聖像啊，諗起佢係一個好偉大行菩薩道嘅神，咁咧係好嘅。咁但係如果我哋入到去跟住人哋誦經啊、誦基督教或者天主教嘅經咧，咁咧係唔啱嘅。咁其實咧，我哋對其他嘅宗教咧，我哋亦都要有一個好尊敬嘅態度，因為所有嘅宗教都係導人向善嘅，所以我哋亦都係要尊重其他嘅宗教。Okay, first question. There's one Dharma practitioner and he's vegetarian and somehow he got sick and he has to take some medicine. And inside the medicine has meat. Did he commit any breaking vows or downfalls? Okay, first of all, should he continue to eat the medicine, take the medicine or not?
Generally, in terms of the 5 lay precepts, there's no problem at all. The lay precepts are not a question of vegetarianism. In terms of the bodhisattva vow, it is also, at least in the Tibetan tradition, not considered a problem. If you have a commitment to vegetarianism, it's important to take care of your body. And some people are just not able to be vegetarianism. They get sick. Lama Dawa was vegetarian for several years and he got sick. He had to start eating meat again. Sometimes you have to take medicines that have a little bit of meat in them. And I don't think that there is a problem for any of the vows, at least as explained in the Tibetan tradition. There is not a question of breaking your vows to take that medicine. So if it helps you, then I think it is okay. As long as it's not, something that's killed specifically for you.
有個師兄問就話一個長期素食嘅居士病了，藥裏有動物成分，可以吃嗎？還是不應該吃此藥？咁上師嗰個答案咧就係話咁樣咧係唔算犯戒。如果一個人係自己決定咗持長素嘅，咁如果突然間有病，首先我哋就要好照顧好自己嘅身體先。因為如果我哋身體唔好，我哋亦都冇辦法去修行，亦都冇辦法去度眾生。咁嗱，舉個例子就係話，有啲人基本上佢係食唔到素嘅，因為佢食素佢會病。例如好似我哋嘅喇嘛大話就係食咗一輪素，跟住咧就病咗，咁佢又要食翻肉。咁咧其實喺藏傳佛教嘅傳統咧，呢樣係唔算犯戒。其實咧，如果我哋係用為一個藥療咧，我哋係可以有眾生嘅藥裏邊，但係要搞清楚一樣嘢就係話，你食嘅藥裏邊嘅眾生唔係為你而殺嘅就可以啦。
That being said, I think that medicines work on your body and your mind. And if your mind, you are not comfortable taking a medicine that has meat in it, then you can look for another medicine. And if there's another medicine, maybe you should take that.
其實好多時都係我哋自己嘅心理作用。即係如果我哋覺得食咗之後係自己唔安樂嘅咧，我哋其實可以去嘗試另外一種藥物。Okay, actually more or less the same question. Is one monk or nun got sick, and he or she has to take the medicine with meat inside. Is that allowed?
That's fine. There's no problem there. Does not violate the monastic fast. We have a question in the back. Yes.
Maybe I should answer.
Okay. Your question, and then in the back.
頭先個問題就係話出家人病咗，同樣都係食嘅藥裏邊有眾生嘅肉，可唔可以食咧？上師話絕對唔係問題。
我想問咧，好似中國人咁啊，係睇風水啊，揾人睇八字啊，係咪破咗嗰個皈依戒啦？唔該。
Okay, this is a good question. Well, she's asking if someone that is asking some feng shui master, you know feng shui, environmental factors, feng shui master to come to their house and check around feng shui, or they go for fortune telling. Does that has any conflict to our refuge vows?
No, actually, there's a big Tibetan tradition of practicing feng shui, and the Tibetans do a lot of fortune telling and all that. You have to distinguish between the worldly and dharma. And it's okay to do things that help you in the worldly level. It's okay. It's great to do things. If you follow the principles of feng shui, you will be in a comfortable, harmonious environment. You will be able to do things better. It will be better for you in a worldly level. It will be better for your spiritual practice. It's fine. But if you think that feng shui is going to bring you to liberation, maybe not.
個問題就係話，其實咧喺西藏藏傳佛教裏邊，亦都有好多關於風水環境學嘅嘢，學術亦都好關於好多占卜星相嘅嘢喺藏傳佛教。咁基本上係唔會構成任何犯戒。但係如果我哋話純粹係用風水或者去睇相啊、問卜啊嗰啲嘢，係令到我哋嘅生活更加協調，而可以幫助到我哋喺日常嘅世間工作，同埋幫助到我哋喺靈修，即係修持佛法方面呢，係絕對冇問題嘅。但係如果你覺得風水或者呢啲咁嘅占卜星相，最終可以令你從輪迴中得到解脫呢，咁就係絕對錯嘅。
In terms of like going to palm readers or fortune tellers, I don't see much point in it. No matter what they say, if you want good things, practice virtue, do the things that will create good conditions, be diligent in your dharma practice, that will bring you good. If you don't want good things, if you want bad, then do harmful things and so forth. I don't see that going to a fortune teller is going to help you. Just do the good things. Of course, bad things might happen, but if you keep the dharma in your heart, that's the most important.
咁其實有時我哋去睇下掌相啊、問下卜咧係可以嘅，但係最終我哋要明白，真正帶到好處俾我哋嘅就係佛陀同埋佛法。咁我哋應該喺呢一方面用一個好誠敬同精進嘅心去修持佛法，咁你就自然會好。其實有佛菩薩嘅地方就係最吉祥，冇嘢吉祥得過佛菩薩。
上師，我想請問咧，譬如我哋咧喺處理嗰啲經書文字裏邊咧，譬如話喺嗰啲經裏邊咧，有時為着要背誦咧，咪會抄一啲字句落嚟咧，方便背誦啦咁樣。咁嗰啲紙仔啊咁樣咧，應該其實係點處理咧？以前咧我都會好隨便咯，但係現在咧就越儲越多咧，就唔知點算好啦。咁跟住咧，譬如人咧就會死噶嘛。譬如果我死嘅時間，我啲書可以點樣處理好呢？其實嗰啲經書呢都係好珍貴啦，但係你未必可以送得到出去㗎喎。咁我哋可以點樣處理嗰啲經書呢？仲有呢，就係話先頭講起話受戒呢，都係會希望喺一個師長面前受戒，希望得到戒體啦。譬如我自己呢，或者都會接觸一啲人啦。以前我細個時咧，因為睇到一本雜誌裏邊講起五戒同埋呢個在家菩薩戒，咁當時覺得好歡喜，就即時咧自己心裏邊就發願守住呢一個戒，一路直到我死啦咁樣。咁其實我都會識到有啲人咧，都係 唔好喺佛前啊或者乜嘢咁去受戒。咁呢啲同佢喺師長面前受戒有啲咩分別呢？咁樣請上師慈悲指。
She has two questions.
Okay.
One is he has many Dharma texts. And sometimes in order for her to memorize and chant it out, she wrote down small notes on small papers. And she has accumulated quite a lot of these notes. And what should she do with them? And more questions actually.
Yeah.
It's a long question. No?
Yeah.
And what happened if she accumulated more and more and one day she died and with all the Dharma texts, maybe she cannot give it away. How to deal with them?
So with the Dharma text, basically, with any Dharma text, when you are done with it, you have no use for it anymore. The traditional method is to burn it. Here at the Dharma Center, it's sometimes hard to do that. We use a shredder.
佢其實話最好嘅辦法咧就係燒咗佢，我同埋可以放落海都得嘅，其實或者埋喺山下邊。
Basically, dispose of it in a respectful way. You don't want to throw it out with other garbage where it'll get covered with food and waste and all this and crud.
其實就係話我哋以一種尊敬心去處理呢啲咁嘅法寶，就唔係話同埋啲魚骨啊、雞骨啊咁撈埋一齊去掉，當垃圾咁掉。
If you're worried about what will happen after you die, you don't have to worry about that so much, but you can leave a note.
佢話其實你唔需要諗，即係你唔喺度嗰時候點處置，其實你好多時候都係可以寫低話應該點去處置，等你唔喺度嘅時候。Okay, the second question about vows. Actually, she read on the magazine teaching about the 5 precepts and the Bodhisattva vow. And she didn't get the vows from a master, but she just told herself, I should keep these vows. So does that work? Has that effect?
Yeah, so if you hear about the vows and you just keep the vows without going and taking the vows formally, that is wonderful. That is very good conduct. It does not raise to the level of actually having the vow. There's something different that happens that when you go in front of a lama and you prostrate and you recite the words and you take the vow. There's a different level of commitment. But keeping the 5 precepts, even without actually taking them, is a wonderful practice and a very good thing to do.
But does she have the vow, actually? No. Okay. 你喺雜誌嗰度睇到關於呢啲5戒啊、菩薩戒咧，上先話呢個係一個非常之好嘅行為，亦都係非常之值得讚歎，因為你自己係發心去受持呢啲戒。咁但係咧，咁唔代表你已經係受咗呢啲戒，因為你唔係一個正常嘅喺一個正確嘅上司嗰度傳呢啲戒，而令你得到呢個戒體。但係你發自內心去做咧，已經係非常之難能可貴。
One more question. We'll take your question.
最後一個問題。
唔該，上司同埋翻譯先生。先頭你話嗰啲紙仔都可以燒咗佢，咁我有一個問題咧，就係我妹咧，就自從我媽去世之後咧。佢就將啲心經咧係咁抄完之後咧就燒俾我媽嘅。咁燒係冇問題啦，而家聽到你咁講，但係我媽又收唔收到咧
Okay. You just answer that all these notes, Dharma notes, can be burnt. Her mother passed away, and her sister always copying the Prajna Paramita, the Heart Sutra. And after she copied it, she just burned it and offered to her dead mother. Does her mother has any benefit on them?
The benefit comes from the aspiration, the burning and then offering. It's when you do something to benefit someone who has passed away, it's the strength of your aspiration that brings that person benefit. If they're in the between state, the bardo, before they have taken birth, they can sense your aspiration and it is helpful for them. Even if they've already taken rebirth, making a dedication or an aspiration on the benefit of another sentient being is always a helpful thing to do. So there is benefit to doing that.
首先你要明白，我哋要去利益我哋離開咗我哋嘅親人，就係話燒嘢唔代表乜嘢嘢，最主要係你有冇願心，你有冇發一個大願心，一個慈悲嘅願心去利益佢。咁嗱，如果喺佢中陰身嘅時候，而你去出自一個願心咧去做呢啲嘢，佢哋係感覺到嘅。但係如果佢過咗中陰嗰49日之後咧，轉世去投胎去其他嘅地方，就算佢投胎去另外一笪地方咧，你如果係以一個大願心、一個慈悲嘅願心咧， 佢哋亦都會得到好大嘅利益，有冇問題？即係你嗱呢749日咧，基本上咧係計臨終中陰開始嗰49日。Now she's actually asking a more complicated question. She's asking, how do you count the 49 days of battle? According to our Chinese tradition or according to Tibetan Buddhism?
49 is average, okay? Some people take rebirth very soon. Some people hang around for a long time. We say 49 for convenience.
基本上呢49日咧，只不過係一個方便嘅。有啲人係唔使49日就去投胎。我話俾極惡嘅人係冇中陰，極善嘅人係冇中陰，極善嘅人係馬上超升，極惡係馬上下墮，係冇中陰身嘅。你搞清楚啲。所以唔好太執着中陰身，最主要係你自己有冇發願，以一個慈悲嘅大願力去度眾生，唔好太執着嗰49日，因為好多人喺10日嗰日已經墮落畜生道，你冇得計。
So thank you all very much.
好多謝大家今日嚟。
So coming together and teaching the Dharma and listening to the Dharma together, there's virtue to this. Virtue just means positive, good things that we've done. And this virtue, we need to dedicate this virtue, reciting the verse. And sometimes we just say, okay, we're going to recite the virtue. But if we think about it and make the real dedication, let's combine all of the virtue that we have done tonight and combine it with all the virtue that anyone has ever done in the past and make this wonderful golden lump of virtue.
Especially today, sun eclipse.
Especially today, yeah.
咁基本上咧，上司嘅開始就係話，我哋能夠嚟呢度聽佛法，亦都大家有咁嘅問題係關於佛法咧，其實咧，我哋今晚係累積咗好多功德，同埋呢啲功德咧，亦都係以前有祖師大德講過。咁我哋係將呢啲功德咧係累積埋一齊，跟住去將佢回向出去，所以呢個功德係非常之殊勝，同埋非常之值得讚歎。咁特別係今日日食咧，呢個功德係更加億萬倍咁去計。所以今日你哋嚟係非常之好嘅日子。
And in particular, let us dedicate this virtue so that all beings may be freed from suffering, that they may all be brought to omniscience and liberation. That in particular, since we have been talking about the 3 vows, that all beings may be able to practice the discipline of giving up harming other sentient beings, so that all sentient beings may be brought to complete happiness.
咁首先就係話，我哋今日嚟到參加，亦都聽咗佛法，咁係亦可以令我哋咧係從輪迴中咧得到解脫，可以離苦得樂。但係咧，我哋亦都要明白，首先我哋要聽完呢啲戒律，就係話我哋要同自己講，我以後唔可以去傷害任何嘅眾生。
And so, keeping this in mind, let's recite the prayer on page 12 of your booklets.
咁大家要謹記，同埋而家我哋係將今日嘅功德回向出去。